Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Azam Nizamuddin. I'm a candidate for the Circuit Court in DuPage County, and we have another wonderful program for you tonight as part of our series, our Zoom Town Hall series. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. We're not talking about the law. We're not talking about political issues. We're not talking about social or any other kinds of things, but we're talking about animals. Yes, you heard it right. It's animals. However, we have human beings who will be doing the presentations regarding animals. In fact, we have three of my colleagues tonight joining us who regularly work with different animals in DuPage County. Given the fact that both in terms of wildlife that exists in DuPage County, but also various domestic pets that we have in our homes, in our neighborhoods. So we thought it would be a good time to just kind of touch base with some experts in the field and get a sense of what it is that they do and share information, really. And this really came out because I was with my daughter, who is going to be a freshman in high school, and she was sort of interested in opportunities of, volunteering her time, spending some time with cats and dogs. And that's when I reached out to my good friend, Christina Morrison, who is an attorney as well, and also part of the DuPage County Bar Association, where I'm a part of. And that sort of discussion led to us doing this program tonight. So with that, let me get started and introduce you to my wonderful guests tonight. First off, we have Daniel Hebriard, who is the president of the DuPage County Forest Preserve. Dan is a lifelong DuPage County resident. He has a degree in Parks and Recreation Management from University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. And he's worked with two local recreation departments before joining the Forest Preserve as a ranger back in 2005. He then did a master's in an MBA from Benedictine University. He lives in DuPage County with his wife and children in Woodridge, in a home that is powered entirely by solar energy. I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about that. And he drives an electric car. So you've got someone who really cares about the environment. So thanks for joining us, Dan.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and tell you about some of the things happening at the Forest Preserve, especially Willowbrook Wildlife Center.
Awesome. Next, we have my friend Christina Morrison, who has been an active volunteer at West Suburban Humane Society, where she currently works since 2009. She joined its board of directors, then became a foster parent and kennel front desk and event volunteer. For the past few years, she's co-chaired an adoption center advisory group and has been an active member of the Capital Campaign. Christine has also been a fundraiser for DuPage Legal Aid for the past 7 years. And she's a practicing attorney, and she worked for a law firm doing different kinds of areas of real estate and transactional work before she became the director of development for the Western Suburban Humane Society this past year. She lives in Downers Grove with her husband and has 3 dogs, and usually a foster dog. However, what she did not include in her bio that she sent to me is the fact she's been a very integral part of what we call Judges Night at DuPage County, for the Bar Association DuPage County, where she often acts and sings and is a very important part and very talented individual as well. And that's how I actually got to know her. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Christina.
Thanks, Oz. Good to be here.
And finally, we have Laura Flamion, who is the operations manager for DuPage County Animal Services. Laura is responsible for planning, directing, and managing the activities related to operating the animal shelter, overseeing rabies control for all of DuPage County, and responding to animal concerns for the unincorporated parts of the county. DuPage County Animal Service, if you don't know, is the only open admission shelter in the area, never turning away any domestic animal regardless of species, breed, behavior, age, or medical condition. Hopefully the tuition rates for the animals is very low, Laura, and I hope that they will remain that way. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I was happy to hear that you were interested in volunteering with your daughter, because that's actually how I got into this industry over a decade ago with my daughter as a volunteer.
Oh, great. So maybe towards the end, you guys can might mention that as well, about different opportunities for people to volunteer, especially students and so forth. So with that, brief introductions, let's get started and just talk a little bit about the wildlife in DuPage County, generally speaking. Dan, as as obviously you know, we actually we have not only flora and fauna in DuPage County, but we have tremendous species of different kinds of wildlife, from birds to fish to frogs and turtles, different kind of mammals, bats, beavers, chipmunks, coyotes and foxes, I guess, and eastern cottontails. I don't know what that means. And mice and voles. I never heard of a vole. Perhaps you can tell us what that is as well. Anyway, I can go on and on, but why don't you tell us a little bit and describe to us a little bit about the wildlife in DuPage and why it really matters to us.
Sure, absolutely. Forest Preserve District of DuPage County, as everyone knows, has 60 different sites to come visit, forest preserves, and we own nearly 26,000 acres, which is about 1/8 of the whole county. So it's an immense operation that we're very proud of, and everyone should be, because we're all ownership of it. And we have a very, very great diverse amount of animals, species, hundreds of different animals that you were talking about, the mammals, the fish, certainly aviary. So we are very lucky and blessed, very healthy populations that we have struggling that we do work on, and you do a lot of important research at the Urban History Research Center for mussels and Heinz emerald dragonflies. So those are federally endangered species that we are working towards protecting. We've also got the Blanding's turtle, which is a federally threatened animal, and we've reintroduced those and had some great success stories working with a lot of partners in the Chicagoland region. And so we are really the stewards of all the native animals. We don't deal with any domestic animals except at our off-leash dog areas. And those areas are fantastically popular. We've had up to 10,000 permits in a year, people coming out enjoying those 7 dog parks. So those areas have been immensely popular, but that's really the human enjoyment factor. We're here for a lot of the native animal species, and one area that we're especially proud of is Willowbrook Wildlife Center. It is a wildlife rehab center, the only one left, I believe, that is government funded, so it's doing really well. We're tremendously busy. We take in several thousand animals a year, and we try to rescue as many as we can and release them, whether it be a hawk, whether it be a small songbird, obviously mammals. We're happy to do it. And it's a big operation, and we do have an exciting announcement this past Tuesday. So we just voted to approve solar installation at Willowbrook Wildlife Center Animal Care Building. So we'll have a big array going up hopefully later this month into next month, and that's a really exciting thing. We had a private donation, and the best part is it's going to pay for itself. So solar is a really good investment, and actually when you do the solar, you get some federal and state rebates. As a government entity, we won't get the federal rebates, but we did get that private donation, very generous. And so we're actually expecting the money to come back within under 10 years. And that means we'll be powering those for decades. Then the solar panels will last decades. So really good investment for the people of DuPage, and really exciting for our wildlife center. And I'll be happy to answer and explain any questions or any activities that we have going on for us. But I want to give everybody else a chance to say hello too.
Great. Well, thanks. Let me just ask you just a brief follow-up question about that, in particular about the Willowbrook Wildlife Center. Why is that unique with respect to the rest of the sort of forest preserve activities? And also tell us where it's located.
Sure, that's great questions. So it is unique because a lot of, unfortunately, animal rehab centers have closed in the Chicagoland region and even in the greater Illinois region. It's very tough business. It's not a lot of money, and certainly the government funding is helpful. So with the commitment through the Forest Preserve District, we've been able to do really well there. Again, taking in several thousand animals and releasing thousands of animals. So it's unique because we're the only ones taking in these native species. As you are going to hear from the West Suburban Humane Society, they don't take in native species. They take in different things, which is fantastic for humans, and again for that great involvement in your home. These are obviously not pets and nothing you'd want in your home. And so we partner with, again, agencies throughout the area, bringing in, birds that hit windows, animals found in yards, different things to really try to, make sure the habitat is good where we return them to, and they have a healthy chance to live. It is located in Glen Ellen. It's right off between Roosevelt and Butterfield on Park Avenue. And so it's right across from College of DuPage, actually. And so it's a small preserve. It does have a nice nature area, and it has an outdoor area where we have some animals we're not able to release due to various factors that they would not survive in the wild. But we're happy to give people that view of what we do on the outside. And you can actually look at our work on the inside as well. There's an area where you could see staff and volunteers working too. So fortunately, due to the pandemic, it is not open at this time. But of course, we hope to bring it back there next year, or maybe later this year if we're really lucky.
Well, I'm glad I asked that about where it's located, because I assume by the name that it's actually located in the village of Willowbrook. But I'm glad to know that, it's in Glen Ellen. So great. All right, let's move on to our good friend Christina and ask her about things that she does at the West Suburban Humane Society, which is essentially, I believe, is a animal shelter, but they do a lot of activities. So Christina, why don't you tell us a little bit about a couple of things. Number one, tell us what West Suburban Humane Society does, and what led you to sort of join them, and because you made a transition from law to here. So just kind of tell us about that.
So the West Suburban Humane Society is a non-government nonprofit. So we're basically a nonprofit corporation. We started in 1972, just a couple local people out of like Lombard and Villa Park saw that animals who were lost, they were having a hard time getting back to their owners. So we originally started as a lost and found referral service, just a couple citizens doing this in their basement on their free time. And then that of course grew to holding animals while they looked for the owner, which then of course grew to being an animal shelter. So we've been at the corner of Ogden and Stonewall Avenues since 1987. And we just opened our brand new adoption center earlier this year, right at the start of the pandemic. So unfortunately, we have not been able to open it to the public other than adoptions by appointment, only having one family come at a time to adopt an animal, trying to stay safe and keep our volunteers safe. So because we are a private nonprofit, we can choose what animals we take in. So we have decided to only take in dogs and cats, no rabbits, no gerbils, hamsters, things like that. We also can say no. If somebody walks in the door and says, here, I found this dog, or I can no longer take care of my animal, we can take that animal in and try to find it a new home, but it's our decision. So we're not what's called an open admission shelter. We get to pick and choose what animals. That also means we can be a no-kill facility. So you'll hear a lot of shelters pride themselves on being no-kill, which means we don't kill animals when we run out of space, because we won't run out of space because we can choose who comes into the shelter. So we only take in what we can adopt out. Okay, now we do adopt out over 500 animals a year, and we do help 2,000 animals a year. So we're doing quite a bit of good, but there's a lot of choice that goes into that, and it's all whatever we decide to do. So our mission is, of course, the main mission is to find new homes for dogs and cats. We also have a mission to educate people about how to humanely care for dogs and cats. So we have kids come to our shelter to take, like right now we're doing summer camps, and we are holding them in person. They're very slimmed down. There's only a few students in the class and they all wear masks, but they are able to come in and get instruction, and that's been a lot of fun. Our humane educators go to schools, they go to Girl and Boy Scout troops, they go to anywhere where they're invited, and we'll go and talk on a topic about how to care for animals, what animals are trying to say to you, all the different things that you need to know. And then my role in the organization is, my title is Director of Development. Basically what that means is I build the relationships that gets us the funding to keep us going. So I did leave my law practice in March to do this full time, and I'm absolutely loving it. Changing careers in a pandemic maybe wasn't the best idea, but it has been a lot of fun. I started volunteering for West Suburban Humane Society back in 2009. I started out on their board, and then you just kind of get sucked in. Then I wanted to see what it was like to foster. So we started fostering dogs. And then I wanted to see what it was like to come in and take care of the dogs at the shelter. And then I like to talk to people. So I was like, well, I'll go to events and talk about the shelter. So, you just kind of, you do a little bit more every year. And before you know it, you've changed careers and you're doing this full time. So we did close to the public at the start of the pandemic completely. Until we could figure out, what was going on. We started adoptions by appointment back in May. That's been very successful. Our adoptions have not slowed down at all. And in fact, our adoption figures are up over this time last year. So everybody's wanting an animal. We have also stepped up giving the food that we can't use because we take in donations of food, but we only feed certain types to our animals. So we've been giving excess food to food pantries and really trying to help out people who are struggling right now. So we're trying to still make a difference. We're still trying to do as much good work as we can, even though people can't come in and tour our new adoption center yet.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate some of that background there. And Laura, can you tell us a couple of things? Can you tell us about what you do at the DuPage County Animal Services Department, but also, and how's that, what you do a little bit different from, say, what Christina's organization does?
Yeah, and thank you, Christina, for kind of leading into a little bit about the differences between open admission or limited admission shelter. So we are an open admission shelter, which means we take any domestic animal that's presented to us at our doorstep, whether it is ill, regardless of the species. So we have far more than dogs and cats. We have rabbits. They're actually the third largest animal that we see coming through our shelter, right under cats and dogs. We see rats. We see reptiles. We just had a rooster the other day. We've had goats. You name it. We've had a pretty wide variety of species come through our shelter doors. We operate a shelter for stray animals, and we also take in owner-surrendered animals. We have a really caring staff that takes care of those animals, and our goal is to try to find as many positive outcomes for them. And we really have a strong belief in trying to reunite pets with their owners when they get lost. What's unique about us as an open admission government shelter is we are not funded through the general tax fund. We're what's called a special revenue fund. So the majority of our funding comes through the sale of rabies tax fees and donations, and then some small amounts of fees from adoption fees or owner surrender fees, things like that. So we're really grateful for the people in the community that support what we do as an open admission shelter. And as a government agency, there's no mandate for us to operate a shelter. Really, a lot of the laws revolve around rabies control, responding to animal concerns or complaints in the community. So on top of running an animal shelter, we also have animal control officers that do field work, whether that's going out and rescuing stray animals, injured animals. We love our partners at Willowbrook Wildlife because we do respond to sick and injured wildlife calls in unincorporated parts of the county. Sometimes we'll be taking them to Willowbrook to see if they can be rehabilitated. And we also are responsible for investigating all of the bite reports in the county. It's an important piece of making sure that we don't have a problem with rabies spread. So any biting animal, we get those reports to our office, and we have staff that goes through there. So we also provide a lot of education. We want to promote responsible animal welfare. We want to help pet owners keep their pets in their homes. So when they're struggling, we're always trying to find resources so that they can hopefully not be surrendering them to a shelter and try to get through whatever challenges they're facing. Just hosted a free vaccination and microchip clinic. We offer free spay-neuter vouchers to people on the LINK program or who are maybe receiving Social Security disability. We also provide, just like West Suburban Humane Society, we pass out food, other supplies, whether it's directly out of our shelter or sometimes we're distributing that through the other food pantries. So educating the community, a lot of that with COVID-19 has gone virtual. So we've got a lot of our Zoom educational content online. We get invited by some of the libraries and park districts to participate. So we're really missing seeing people in person. But what's been interesting about this is our population has actually decreased during this pandemic because we don't actively transport animals from other areas into our building. We're kind of at the mercy of what our local area brings into us. We've actually seen quite a decrease in animals, which has been a nice change. And I think a lot more people are working together within their own communities to try to solve their pet problems, which is phenomenal.
And Laura, where is your office located? Where is this animal services located?
Sure. We are at 120 North County Farm Road in Wheaton. We're part of the county campus, right by Roosevelt Road and County Farm Road.
Oh, okay. And so you do have animals at those locations?
We do. And sometimes people will look at our website and say, you don't have a lot of dogs on the adoption floor, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of dogs in the building because we are a stray holding facility. So while you might not see any dogs up for adoption, for example, right now, we might have 20 dogs in the building, either waiting for their owners to try to find them, or sometimes because we get a lot of challenging animal cases, we have animals that might struggle being on the adoption floor. Maybe they're experiencing kennel stress, or maybe they need some additional support in a foster home to help get them ready to be adopted. So many times we'll have animals in our building that are waiting to get transferred to local rescue groups, or a group like West Suburban Humane Society would pull from us so they can maybe get them in a foster home and prepare them for adoption.
Okay, I'm looking at your website actually now, and I do see some cats that you have up for adoption. You have Saffron, who's on hold, who's a female 7 months, domestic short hair. And on hold, what is on hold similar to when a house for sale is under contract? Is that the same concept here?
It's similar, yes. Yeah, whether it's maybe we have an adoption pending, or sometimes an animal will go on our adoption floor. And then maybe while they're waiting to be adopted, they come down with a little cold. And so we might, we want to still market them and make sure people are seeing them, but we might just put them on hold just to make sure we can get them some medicine and get them better before they go out the door.
Sure. Well, okay, great. That's interesting. I'm because as Christina knows, we're both active in the Bar Association. I often will go to court, and I had no idea that there was a building there. I know that there's a building for, administrative purposes, election commission, recorder of deeds, but I had no idea there was also a building in that complex that housed animals. So I didn't know that. I hope you guys all learned that. That's kind of cool. I wanted to ask Dan a little bit about the issue of how COVID has impacted the forest preserve. And the reason I ask for that, Dan, is the fact that, the first month, really right after, March, middle and end of March, we were all sort of hunkered down. And I remember I didn't go out at all to exercise or to go for a jog or a walk until probably towards the middle of end of April. And when I did, it felt so liberating. It was really nice. I'm just curious as to how the Forest Preserve sort of was impacted by this.
So obviously, like any other agency, they had a great amount of impact, but we were very lucky. It was a bipartisan full board decision to stay open, and our management team agreed with that decision. So we actually had all of our trails, or I should say most of our trails and our preserves open. We did have select closures where people were congregating. We had full closures of all buildings. And again, a lot of them are, unfortunately still remain closed, but we have found we have been busier than ever. So our usership has been incredibly high ever since basically March 17th and continues today. So we basically used to have weekends be our busiest point, and every day is a weekend for our staff out in the field. So we're incredibly busy with our police and rangers and obviously the grounds crew. We've utilized our education staff for actually helping at Willowbrook, where we've been short volunteers, because I know a lot of people were trying to keep their volunteer crews safe, and we were in the same boat. So we were using our paid staff in roles at Willowbrook that we'd have volunteers typically. And we also had them out of preserves as preserve ambassadors. to help answer questions and welcome people that might not be familiar with our preserves. Again, as we were having unheralded attendance highs. And so we are able now to have more things open as we are in phase 4. So we do have our family campground open. We have our youth campgrounds opening soon. Green Valley Scenic Overlook is opening August 1st. We're opening up bathrooms. We've had the bathrooms open for the past month with porta potties because they're a less touch point, but now opening up our bigger facilities. Our latrines, they're able to handle more people, multi people at once, because again, we are in phase 4. So very few things remain closed. Unfortunately, Willowbrook is one of them, but I misspoke. I want to be clear. We have continued to take animals this whole time. So we just had a touchless animal drop-off experience for people, and we continue to take animals. And we do have some limits, so you can go to our website and check and ensure that we will take that animal. You can always call us, but absolutely still taking animals, and still very high rate of people dropping off animals. And we've had a lot of success rehabbing animals and releasing this year, actually. With a little bit more focus because we've been taking a little less of some animals. So no, it's affected the Forest Preserve a great deal in a lot of ways, but our dog parks, our trails, our areas are open, and they've been super busy. And I want to give a shout out to Laura because I know she's got a couple of our old staff working for her, and they hopefully are doing a really good job for her. And personal experience, I know our rangers were able to drop off, dogs when we find a lost dog, and even have procedures to do it after hours. So they're a great partner for us and for the whole county. And on a personal note, I actually, back in my former role as a ranger, I had a caiman once, and that is a small type of alligator. And the caiman was very emaciated and had been someone's pet they were not taking very good care of. And they were absolutely welcoming to it over at the animal shelter. And I think they found a home for it actually too, because they do try with the exotics. They have some partnerships just like we do, we do get calls and we try to send people, elsewhere, obviously, because we don't know how to handle the exotics, but they were very welcoming and took that in. So I appreciate all the work they do.
Before I go to Christina for a question, I just had a follow-up, Dan. Just for some of us who are not really active outdoors, what's the difference between what you guys do and the services you provide and say something like Morton Arboretum? I know the whole flowers and other fauna and things like that they have, but what's the difference if there really is any?
There is a difference. I mean, again, it's a great partnership. We partner with them, so happy to work with them. They're a fantastic, agency in the area. What they do is they are actually a host for all these plants throughout the whole world, and unfortunately, we are too. We don't want to be though. So when you see our work days when we're removing buckthorn and multiflora rose and garlic mustard, it's because we don't want these invasive species from around the world, and they're highlighting it there, and obviously highlighting in a fantastic way. Not buckthorn and some of the other negative things, but beautiful plants from Asia and Europe. And so really they're a great, partner in that way, is that you can go there and see some things that you would never find at a forest preserve. But we really are looking for the native species. We restore these areas to have oaks, to have savannas and these prairies and areas that are really high quality. And they're doing the high quality work over there, but they're really incorporating, plants from all over the world.
Great. Christina, I had initially reached out to you to ask about volunteerism or volunteer opportunities for my daughter and even a friend of hers. And I wanted to ask you generally about that, but also has the pandemic affected volunteer opportunities for your organization?
Well, unfortunately, it has. So when the pandemic started, and which is also when we were moving buildings, we sent as many animals as we could to foster care. So we had volunteers who had never fostered before stepping up and saying, okay, I'll take a dog during the move and during COVID, to give you guys some breathing room. So we only had about 5 to 7 dogs and about 20 cats at the beginning of the pandemic. So we only needed a couple volunteers a day to come in to care for them. And staff helps with that as well. So as time has gone on, we're getting more and more animals back into the shelter. Opening the kitten room was a fun day, and that's been like our most popular room because they're hilarious. So we're bringing back more and more of our volunteers. So now we have about 50% of our volunteers back working their shifts at the shelter. So we're not training new volunteers just yet. We want to bring back all of our existing volunteers first. So we're planning to start training new shelter volunteers in the fall. Now that's for the on-site volunteers, the volunteers that come to the shelter to play with the dogs and cats and do a little cleaning and feeding and things like that. We are currently always looking for foster homes. So if, say, you and your family, Oz, would like to take some kittens home, we would give you those pretty quickly. All you got to do is that.
All right, great. I hope you all heard that all there out there. They're ready to give away some kittens, so you can reach out to Christina for that. What about you, Laura? In terms of volunteer opportunities, are they available? And if so, has that been affected?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the same boat as West Suburban Humane Society. We were really fortunate that we had just so many people willing to step up and foster. We had a lot of our rescue partners pull animals from us so that we could allow some of our staff to work shortened schedules and shelter in place during those early months of the pandemic and really being unsure of what to expect. We did maintain staying open that whole time, but really by appointment and trying to make sure we were interacting safely with people. But our shelter is really hard to socially distance in. So staff has taken on most of the responsibility of caring for animals, and we've been slowly bringing back volunteers as our shelter population has been increasing. It's hard to say when we'll be onboarding new volunteers. I think we really need to see our existing volunteer base come back first. But, you know, volunteering is such a rewarding thing. And as Christina said, fostering is another really great way to volunteer and really make a difference in preparing an animal for a new home.
Is there, and this is for both of you, Christina and Laura, is there such thing as temporary fostering? In other words, can you do this for a certain period of time, or once you foster, is it a permanent relationship?
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, we can do both. So what I like to tell potential foster parents is that we can start you off as a vacation foster. So I am a potential long-term foster. So when I take in an animal into my home, I have it until it gets adopted, which can be anywhere from 3 days to the longest is 6 months. And then I eventually ended up foster failing and keeping that animal. But, you know, it can last a couple months. So, but during those 6 months, if I go on vacation, we need somewhere for that animal to go. So that's a perfect thing for new fosters to do, is to take the dog for a weekend or a week while I'm on vacation. And it gets new fosters a chance to try it out without a long-term commitment. And then we have some foster homes that only ever want to take a dog for a week, and that's fine because it gives us an extra week at the shelter to, you know, adopt out an animal and get a kennel run open. So we actually leave it more up to the foster parents to tell us how long can they keep an animal, and we're willing to work with them.
And our foster situation is a little bit different because the animals that we're receiving at the shelter, we really don't always know what their behavior is. And so some of the animals that we're receiving in might need a specialized foster home to help work with them on any fears they might have. Maybe they need homes with no other animals. Where we tend to have a really robust foster program is with our kittens. Kittens are always fun. But with our dogs, we're usually looking for more specialized foster homes for them. The animals that are really maybe easy to foster are also usually highly adoptable and move pretty quickly. We have a couple sets of volunteers that will do like a little day trip though. And fostering can be a little shorter period of time if you're just kind of hanging on to that animal while we're getting it ready for adoption. And kittens are a great example of that.
Great. So let's continue to talk a little bit about adoptions, because we do have a question that came up on our Facebook live feed. It looks like I'm going to try to read it if I can. It says that obviously the pandemic has affected, you know, the ability for adoptions. However, are we prepared for the opposite to happen and the potential influx of returns when life gets back to normal? The question's concern is dogs, especially when they're not used to being alone while humans are at work, and what happens when everyone then returns back to work and gets busy, and now the animal is stuck at home and so forth. So are there any sort of, I guess, advice or preparations for that?
Yeah, so we actually have a video on our website, which is dupageco.org/animal services, that our animal services chairman, Brian Krajewski, put together with us. to kind of help people think about what separation anxiety might look like as you're kind of changing your schedule and going back to work. Our pets have been so used to having us home these last few months. So we'd encourage people to take a look at that. Separation anxiety can be really complex and different for different animals. So it's usually a combination of working with your veterinarian and understanding what training methods might be helpful to prepare your pet for leaving and help deal with any behaviors that might arise from that. We fortunately have not seen a rush of returned adoptions, which has been phenomenal. I think the crisis that we're facing very soon here, though, we're starting to see it with our owner surrenders, is a housing crisis. We're already starting to see a lot of people calling us saying, I'm being evicted, or I've lost my job, haven't been able to earn as much, and I need to move now, and I can't move with my animals. So we had this concern about returned adoptions or people buying puppies and then all of a sudden having to, not have time for them. But I think really the challenge that we're facing might possibly be, the financial crisis.
Mm-hmm. Great. Christina, let me ask you a question. I noticed on your website, you have something called Barkapalooza. Barkapalooza.
Yes.
I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming it has to do with dogs. So why don't you tell us what that's about?
So being a nonprofit, we are all privately funded, and we don't have somebody in the back with big bags of money. We have to go out and solicit money. And so part of the way we do that is through events. Our biggest annual event every year is called Barkapalooza. It started out as a dog walk where people raise money from their friends for, every lap walked or whatever. And that it's kind of evolved into a dog walk and pet expo. So now, normally, if it wasn't COVID, you would go to the Lisle Community Park in September and participate in a dog walk. And then there would also be tons of vendors and food trucks and different bands playing. And it's like a whole day of just fun demonstrations and things to do. And it's a very family-friendly event. Now this year, because of COVID, it is going to be all online. So during the months of August and September, we're going to be posting video demonstrations and you can shop our vendors online and things like that. And the point of it is to not only educate people and let them have fun with their pets and teach them different things that they can do with their pets, but also raise money for the shelter.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So Dan, coming back to you, I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about different species that we have in the forest preserve. I had no idea, for example, that in our area, in particularly the DuPage County Forest Preserve, there's so many different kinds of birds of prey. I thought there was just maybe one species of hawk, and I often will see them as I'm driving, on the highway. They're sitting perched on top of the light. But based on what I saw on the Forest Preserve website, there's hawks, falcons, harriers, eagles, even osprey and owls and vultures. And I never saw them. So any advice on how we can see more of these?
Absolutely. The most important thing you can do is keep your eyes open when you're at a forest preserve. They're all over. And like you said, even driving when they're up on a light pole. And we really have a very high population of hawks and kestrels. And, we've got a few falcons. We did have an eagle's nest spotted, actually not far from my house in a forest preserve here locally. And of course, we try not to say where it is because we don't want to overwhelm the eagles, but we have a really good population. And we have a fantastic partnership, actually, at the Green Valley Scenic Overlook, where they do the Hawk Watch. And so that's an all-volunteer group, and they come out and they do Hawk Watch in the fall. And they basically count all the birds, all the migrating birds, and it's a fantastic thing. They're there through November, and again, thousands of birds, and it really helps give an accurate count because unfortunately we are losing seeing declining species numbers with a lot of our aviary species, a lot of birds. So it's really important to keep track and see some of these trends, and so it's a great spot to do that at. One thing I want to go back in time just a little bit is I want to thank our volunteers because we have, like everybody, some fantastic people. We would not be able to do what we do at Willowbrook without our volunteers. We have one full-time veterinarian. We're adding, another. But we have so many veterinarians and vet techs that come out and help us, and people who don't have veterinary experience, but are just able to do all the different work that needs to be done at an animal care facility, all the cleaning and the important work. And so we really love our volunteers, and I just want to give them a quick shout out.
So if somebody doesn't want to volunteer for your department, what do they have to do?
So we have volunteer opportunities throughout the whole district. And so we basically have an open house in the winter. It would be in January. So again, we're not sure if we're going to be able to hold that. We did last year. And then we have another informational night that we hold. And our headquarters is in Wheaton. So it's right across from the Donata Horse Farm. So our Forest Preserve headquarters is there on Naperville Road in between Butterfield and I-88. And so it's a great place. We like to have people out. And then we have volunteers at all of our education sites, and natural resource volunteers, bird monitors, aquatic monitors, and we have people who help with our programs with the rangers. We have trail patrol, which helps our law enforcement and gives us eyes on our 166 miles of trails. So we have a huge volunteer program that actually has nearly 1,000 participants every year. And so you just have to reach out to us. So we have opportunities. You can put your application in now, even though typically we have our onboarding in the spring. So like everyone else, we're keeping fingers crossed we can have our onboarding and bring on new ones and really welcome back our old ones. Because as everyone else has already said, we have some that we've been able to welcome back, thankfully. And there's others that really, unfortunately, we just have not been able to quite bring them back into the fold.
And also, for those of you who maybe just joined, also one of the things that's a great opportunity for people in residents of DuPage is the different lakes that exist and different ponds for fishing. And I think this area has tremendous fishing opportunities. Whenever I go jogging near where I live, often I'll see people, doing fishing in nearby the trails and so forth. And I think you guys stock, right, Dan, different kinds of fish throughout. Is it throughout the year or just once a year?
So different times we do stock. We actually have worked with the state before, the IDNR, and we've actually stocked the rivers. So you'll see that the West Branch and East Branch have, and Salt Creek have, high quality fishing. And those have been helped, again, through stocking through the state efforts. But locally in our ponds and lakes, we do stock, and we do stock a lot of times in the spring or the fall instead of the heat of summer. But we stock a variety of fish, and we have, some really fun, bass fishing and some really good sport fish. So you can go out there and get a panfish with your kids, or you can absolutely go after those, walleye even. We have walleye in a couple of our lakes. So, and that's all online. You can find all that information about which lake you want to go to that's near your house, what's going to be in the lake, the creel report for the whole thing, and then obviously the creel limits, so you know what you can keep and what you'd have to give back. And a lot of people who are obviously just, don't keep anything, but it's okay to keep if it's in that limit.
I had no idea you guys had walleye, because I usually go to either Costco or to Culver's to get my walleye.
Well, if you've got your fishing license, you can absolutely come out to a couple of the forest preserves that have the walleye, and you can catch them and then fry them up, yourself, Azam. I think that's a great plan for you.
Yeah, I need to do that more often, but maybe after my campaign, because fishing does take its time. So, hey, I want to ask Christina and Laura a little bit about issues about animal neglect and cruelty and things like that often comes up. I've seen a lot of commercials on TV in between news reports about that. And can you tell us a little bit about, is that an ongoing issue? Do you guys have to deal with that? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse, and so forth?
Sure, yeah. As an animal services and control facility, I'm happy to speak to that. So we are responsible for investigating, as I mentioned earlier, bite reports throughout the whole county. But when it comes to other animal complaints, our jurisdiction is the unincorporated parts of the county. So we also try to be a resource for our municipal partners, our departments, who are oftentimes the first responders when they're responding to a complaint, whether it's what somebody's perceived to be neglect or cruelty, hey, this animal's been alone in this home for days, whatever that complaint might be. I wouldn't say that it's something that we see an increase or a decrease of. It just kind of fluctuates in terms of what people are complaining about. But there's been a couple higher profile things, I think, lately. but fortunately, we don't see that on a day-to-day basis. What we tend to see a lot of is the way we might care for our pets might be different from the way our neighbor might care for our pets. And we have strong opinions about that because we love animals. But the reality is the way somebody else is caring for their pet, even though you might not agree, may not necessarily be illegal. The Illinois Animal Control Act and a lot of the other pieces of legislation out there, for a lot of people, they might perceive them to be a little bit archaic in terms of what standards of care are. It's something that I've been really grateful to see a lot of our legislative leaders taking a stand and trying to make some changes. But at the end of the day, we do investigate. If somebody's got a complaint for something in the unincorporated parts of the county, we take that seriously, and we definitely go out and investigate those things. And the county does have what's called their legislative agendas. So when citizens bring up something that's important to them, our county board members look at those issues and determine if that's going to be a priority for them, whether it's at a state or a federal level. So one such example of what a lot of people perceive to be cruelty is what happens at puppy mills, for example, and the care and condition of animals, you know, the mothers that are producing all of these for sale animals. And I'm really proud to say that for a couple of years now, our DuPage County Board has had the banning the sale of commercially bred pets, mostly cats and dogs and rabbits. They've been trying to prohibit that on a state level, and that's been challenging to get through. So we're fortunate that once again, our chairman, Brian Krajewski, has been really kind of championing town to town to have them pass ordinances locally. So yeah, we're always working to try to make it better, but the reality is what we perceive to be care might be different than what our neighbors perceive to be care.
Right. And as a private organization, we can't enforce anything, you know, with respect to abuse, neglect. But what we like to do is act as a resource. So under the resources tab on our website, we have a whole section on what does abuse, neglect look like? Again, trying to distinguish just different standards of care that are legal and maybe ones that cross the line and become illegal. And then we also tell people who to call if you think you see a dog or a cat or an animal who's being abused or neglected. We basically, in DuPage County, we send them to Laura's organization.
Sure. So your organization, Laura, is the first place that people should go to if they have seen or believe that there's any kind of animal neglect or abuse going on, correct? As opposed to, say, the police department or something.
So it depends on where somebody lives. If they live in an in-town location of DuPage County, they actually would contact their local PD first. If they live in unincorporated parts of DuPage County, we would then be the organization to contact. I kind of, when, you know, jurisdiction can be a confusing thing to most residents. And I kind of liken it to, you know, if you dial 911, do you get the police or do you get the sheriff? So we're kind of like that extension from the sheriff when it comes to animal related calls. But we are always happy to support our municipal partners in any way we can too.
Great. So I do have a question for you guys about adoption, taking in. So for example, at our home, we have a male cat that we got back, I want to say early 2019. And he's really grown into our family. He's really become part of the family. And so if we wanted to adopt, say, some additional cats or kittens, how do you sort of determine what is a good sort of transition when you have an existing cat that's 1 or 2 years old, for example, and you bring in either a male kitten or a female kitten? Are there any sort of suggestions about doing something like that?
So Oz, thank you for bringing that up. We would be happy to adopt you out, another cat or 2 or 5. Just kidding. You got to know your municipal limit.
My daughter is jumping for joy right now, I can tell.
So we always stress to take your time. So when someone has a dog at home and they're adopting another dog, the dogs meet before you finalize the adoption to make sure that they get along. Well, we can't really do that with cats. So we will send a cat home
to, it's with its adopter who may have a cat at home that the two cats have never met. So, when you first bring a new cat home, you definitely have to keep them separated. Don't let them go nose to nose. And we tell people expect it to take several weeks of keeping the animals apart, then slowly integrating them, letting them sniff each other through a gate or something first, and just give it a lot of time, because the majority of the returns that we get that are, returns that happen within a week of someone taking an animal home is that they just didn't give it enough time and go slowly enough for the two animals to be able to get along. Eventually they will learn to live with each other. Usually ideally they become best friends.
Mm-hmm. And does it matter about if it's a male or female? So we've got a male. If we get a female, does that mean that within 9 months we're going to see a lot of puppies in the house or something? I mean, kittens in the house. Sorry.
Well, every animal that comes from our organization has to be spayed or neutered. It's the state law. So you will never get kittens or puppies from any of our animals.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Okay, so we're sort of running towards the end of the hour, and let me just see if there's any additional questions. There's a comment about puppy mills and the stores who sell them and so forth. Laura, can you go back and explain to us the issue about why the puppy mills why it's a controversy, not about your views about it, but just generally why that's an issue? Because I have seen, I remember when I used to go and get our meats from our butcher, there was a puppy mill 2 doors down, and there were some protests and things like that. And I wasn't really sure what that was about.
Yeah. So a lot of the challenges with puppy mills is the inhumane conditions under which these animals are being bred. They're being bred for profit, which is not, it's not a bad thing to have a business that's for profit, but you want to make sure that those animals are being kept in humane conditions, that you're not overbreeding them, that they're getting the care that they need. We hear a lot of stories about not just the mothers who are not receiving the care that they need in some of these mass breeding facilities, but the puppies themselves, when they're arriving to the stores, not receiving the care that they should be getting. We see reports of disease. We were hearing recently of a parvo outbreak at a store. And unfortunately, people they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these animals, and sometimes also taking out credit to pay for these animals. So there's some predatory lending that's also happening. You walk into the store and it's a very emotional thing. And some people walk in there and they've got this idea that they're saving this animal too. And so there's just a lot of challenges with that business model. Besides it also being inhumane, there's some real setbacks to people who are just stretching themselves too thin to spend thousands and thousands on these animals. And then also to find out maybe they're sick. We've had some of the animals even surrender to our shelter because they got a sick animal from the store and then the store would take it back. We do feel, though, that we're not looking to put these pet stores out of business. We've seen that there can be some successful changes in their business model by adopting out rescued animals. Obviously, groups like West Suburban Humane Society, they have animals available all of the time. And those are rescued animals. So we're not trying to put businesses out of business. We're looking at ways that they can run their business with a more humane model that isn't putting all of these animals in poor conditions, and that isn't preying on the consumer either.
Azam, we're having a hard time hearing you. I think you might have somehow.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. We've got a really good question on our Facebook live feed. Do you guys have any landscaping tips for homeowners who want their yard to be a refuge for small animals?
Absolutely. So we want everybody to plant native. So certainly we know people have grass, and grass is okay, and grass is nice to play on, but really grass roots are about this tall, and native roots are taller than my ceiling. We have plants that will have roots all the way down to 15 to 20 feet. Animals will love a native garden in your yard if you can have a section, where you have that. We have in our yard butterfly area, and we've been seeing a lot of butterflies this past month, and other birds, and obviously native species love to be around all these native plants. So that's what we would recommend strongly. And then not treating whether it's the natives or your grass. Certainly that's going to do harm to the wildlife when you treat your yard with harsh chemicals.
Okay, great. All right. Before I ask my final questions, I wanted to ask you, there's two of the government organizations here, plus we have the West Suburban Humane Society. Are there other organizations you guys can sort of recommend that are also very active with respect to either wildlife or pet adoption and pet caretaking?
So there are all kinds of private rescues like ours, not only for dogs and cats, but rabbits, gerbils, hamsters, even reptiles. Any animal that you can buy in a store, you can probably find in rescue. So I do encourage everyone to seek out a rescue for whatever animal they're looking for. We get a lot of calls asking for certain breeds of animals. And so there are actually websites online that are databases of all and only rescue animals. One of them is petfinder.com. And so if someone calls us asking for a Shih Tzu or a poodle, I tell them to look at petfinder.com. They can look at all of the rescues in the Chicagoland area, and there's usually a Shih Tzu or two or a poodle out there for them, and they can go to that rescue and rescue rather than shop.
Great. And Christina, why don't you remind us also your organization's websites for the people out there?
So it's our initials, WSHS, and then we're in Downers Grove, so it's -dg.org. We have a very active Facebook page and Instagram page, so we do encourage you to follow us. If you want a cute picture of a dog or cat every day with all the stress going on, I definitely encourage you to follow us on Instagram because we're posting all animals all the time.
Wow, Instagram, that is so cool. How about you, Laura? What you guys have a website or information you'd like to share with everybody here?
Yeah, we're a part of the DuPage County website, so it's dupageco.org/animal services. We also are very active on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Our caretakers and volunteers just take some phenomenal fun pictures. It makes me jealous that I'm sitting behind a desk most of the time, seeing all of the fun they're having, but you'll definitely get a variety of photos from us too, because like I said, we just had a rooster the other day, we've got rabbits, sometimes we've got the rats, we've got all sorts of fun things for you guys to check out. So yeah, we'd love to visit our social media.
And Dan, you're obviously with the Forest Preserve, you just type in Forest Preserve of DuPage County, it should show up, I would think. But we do have a question that just came in for you, which is the following. Do you have any recommendations to keep birds from flying into my large first floor windows?
Well, we can recommend bird glass, but that's a very expensive option. Another thing you can really do is hang something, and it can be very unobtrusive to humans, but it will help the birds, something that shimmers a little bit, and that'll help them see that there's actually a pane of glass there because you're keeping it clean, which is great. But certainly that's what we would recommend, and we try to do ourselves is, hang something in front of the glass that would be shimmering that they would see, or you can get bird glass, but that's a little bit more expensive of an option. And I was just going to plug, yes, DuPageForest.org. Of course, if you search for us, DuPage Forest is fine, you'll get there. And I opened up our DuPage fishing guide while we've been discussing. You can get all the information about the stocking reports and every single lake over 20 that we have fishing available to you. And again, Willowbrook does so much great work taking in thousands and rehabilitating thousands of animals every year of native species.
And ladies and gentlemen, you'll also find the websites on our Facebook Live page. Just go to the post and you'll see them as well. Okay, you guys, we're pretty close to the end of the hour, so I'd like to ask you one final question before we wrap it up, and it's a very important question. I think it's a question that most people are going to be asking you guys, so I hope it's not too complex. But my question to you is, have you seen The Tiger King on Netflix? And What is your opinion?
I have not watched The Tiger King.
What?
I don't watch any movies with animals at all. When you work in rescue, you see enough animals struggle in your daily life, in real life, that I don't really want to watch it in either in documentary form or fiction form.
I'm speechless, Miss Morrison. I don't know what to say.
You're not going to like my answer much better either, then, because I have not seen it. And
Oh my God!
I think I've seen it in social
Laura,
media.
please save me. Please save me. At least tell me you did.
I'm not
It was the most talked about show in our office, so I had to watch it. But I tell you, it tore me up. So I don't blame you, Christina. You know, it's interesting because when you're in animal work, you do need, for your own health, you need to balance that with something else. And so yeah, I don't blame you.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming and joining our Zoom meeting, telling and really educating myself, but also all the residents of DuPage and elsewhere about animals and adoptions and wildlife. With us today was Daniel Hebriard, who is the president of the DuPage County Forest Preserve, Christine Morrison, who is the director of development at the West Suburban Humane Society, and also Laura Flamion, who is the operations manager for DuPage County Animal Services. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you guys soon.
Thanks for having us.